Hi. Welcome to the Fairfax Town Council. Well, it's two special meetings. Number one, well, do I have to say what they are? Special meetings number 1 and 2, we're opening both of them at the same time so we can go through the whole agenda. Anyway, roll call will probably say that we're all here and accounted for. I guess I should say the date, which is Wednesday, September 27th at 5 p.m. And both of these say the Pledge of Allegiance, so that's our first thing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so can I see what do you want to do first? Forest? Okay, because people in here are for forest, right? Okay, let's do that first. Discussion and consider adoption of resolution awarding a contract for the Forest Avenue Road Stabilization Project, approximate location 345 Forest Avenue. And that's the title. And Garrett, do you want to talk about the staff report?
Sure. Just to point out to the council, you have two staff reports. One that was a placeholder staff report, which we sent out on Friday, and then you have the supplemental, I believe you may have just received yesterday. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of mention both reports, but in essence, your action tonight is adopt a resolution to award a contract to Massa Construction for the Forest Avenue Road Stabilization Project. We'll get to that because you have a couple options with adoption of that resolution. But as some background, as you may recall, obviously the road was damaged from the winter storms, and that we initially had a bid opening in August 10th. We only had one bidder, came in at $400,000. At your August 16th council meeting, you rejected all bids, and then we talked about perhaps redesigning the project from a 20-foot wide roadway to 18 feet, with the concept of we probably would save upwards of $100,000. And so we went ahead, redesigned that project with a bid alternate at council direction to maybe include the possibility of having one parking area along that 100 linear feet of road improvement. And so we did do that. The bids came in. Thankfully, we got more than one bid, and we actually received 3 bids. And actually, they are significantly less than the original bid that we received, and rejected all bids. And so what's before you are the lowest responsible bidder. You award based on the lowest base bid. And if you select the lowest base bid, then you could ask for the alternate, and it's all part of one. This, fortunately, is their base bid, and their base bid plus alternate is actually the lowest out of all of them. So we kind of were fortuitous to have that happen. So whereas Massa Construction for their base bid is about $242,244. That's for the base bid. That's an 18-foot wide roadway. Base bid plus the alternate is $288,498. In essence, what that does is it has about a transitional area of about 19 feet that allows a car to kind of pull in, park, and then pull out. And that's kind of the alternate. So in essence, one parking area along that stretch of forest. And so really what the question is to the council is which one to select, the base bid or the base bid plus the alternate. Something to keep in mind is that we originally thought the project would cost $230,000 plus design, so $200,000 for construction. So obviously this is slightly more. So depending on what you pick, we probably need to do a budget appropriation of about $67,000 to $117,000, just depending on what option. Now, one of the things too is originally we had reported that it's not eligible for FEMA funding, and you have to go for emergency relief funding from the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA. That program is administered by Caltrans. We still have not received approval of the project. It's on a list, but just no approval at this time. I think one approach we could do, obviously we need to get this work done. what we'll do is, even if we do that as staff and talking to the county, they have in the past, we'll go ahead and wait and apply through the process and see if we get reimbursed, even though we've proceeded ahead with the project. So you have that possibility there as of a funding source. So pretty much it's adopting a resolution, either authorizing the base bid plus alternate. We're asking for a 10% project contingency, and then some appropriations to the general fund, the storm account, which I believe is Fund 52, so we have the appropriation in the right place. So with that, that's pretty much the staff report.
Well, thank you, Garrett. Seems pretty self-explanatory, but do you have a clarifying question?
So Garrett, when you're talking about the 18 feet wide and then going into that one section that's 19 that would provide what you just said, a parking area?
Yeah,
Are you
actually,
talking about one parking place?
it's one parking place, and what happens is it's 19 feet long,
Oh, long.
that
I'm sorry.
section.
Right.
But the width of it is 24 feet, but it's a phase transition. So it'll go from 18 to 24 and then back down to 18. And the design allows that there's enough room so a vehicle could pull in, just pull in like you normally would, park, and then pull out. And that area is about 19 linear feet. I think the additional cost, if you were to break out the additional cost, it's about $46,000 more for the alternate.
Right. And that's the full potential length of that space? It's not possible to get two
No,
for the money?
no, not in that design. I mean,
Okay.
if you have two small vehicles, I suppose you could try to squeeze something in.
Okay,
But
thanks.
that's currently how it works.
Barbara?
So just, I mean, I know the county has said you could always try after the fact, but I think we should go into this with the idea we probably won't get paid back, and if we do, it'll be a little bit, it's not going to be the full boat. And I just think we should go into that with our eyes wide open. But it's still good that we'll try to get some money back, right?
Yeah, the county's done this before. They've gotten money back, but that's not a guarantee. It's a little surprising. On the list are all county projects. Those have all been approved by FHWA and Caltrans for emergency relief funding. I don't believe any of the towns or cities at this point have any approvals. It's hard to say with all the other damage, not necessarily in California, but all the other states, all that storm damage. I just don't know how much money is there available to go around.
And just to clarify, Garrett, the reduced bid amount now that we have for the base bid of $242,000 versus almost $400,000, that reflects that we're going with a narrower roadway and therefore a much lower retaining wall. And that's where most of the cost difference is.
Yes, so we've gone from 24 feet to 18 feet over a little more than 100 linear feet of road, and you've saved about $160,000 just by that one design. A lower retaining wall, and I think there may not be as many tiebacks required for that portion of the road.
I had one question. This single parking place that we're talking about with the enhanced option here, the design of that basically makes use of the topography there? Because I know that the slide is, below this. I mean, that whole slope below this has a lot of different slides on it. But it's taking that into account, and that's pretty much the best place to put one. And if we were thinking about more than one parking place, that would probably complicate it significantly.
It would. Not only that, you'd have to either do it as a change order or rebid it. So the direction to Miller Pacific is we did discuss where does it make the most sense to put this space, and it is on one side of the 100 linear feet. I can't see what I did with the plans, but it looks like it's on closer to one side than it is to the other.
Okay, that's what I'd imagine looking at the topography of the area. But I just wanted to clarify for the record. Are there any other questions from the council of staff? Then I would open up the public portion of this. Does anybody have any comments on this? Please step right up. And there's a button there. Yeah, you're on.
Is that it? Okay. Hi, guys. Stacy Colto.
So I just had a couple of quick questions. When you say because we are talking about my parking spot. So when you say the 19 feet in length that you're talking about, where in reference to my house is that actually going to be?
I'm not, well, I would have to show you on the plans, because I'm not sure exactly where your house is in reference to the
It's-
plans.
It's right there.
So if you're right
Well,
there,
it's-
the best way to describe it, if your house is in the middle of the 100 linear feet, looking down to the road, it would be to the left.
So closer to where the fire hydrant is.
That's correct.
Yes, actually, that is correct.
Okay. That was one question I had. The other question I had is, when we're talking about the width of the road in general, so now you're talking about, you originally were going to do 20 feet, now you're talking about doing 18 feet. Is that section of road that's right in front of my house still, when this is all said and done, is it still going to be the ordinance of Fairfax that there has to be 12 feet from the edge of whatever car is parked there to the side of my retaining wall, in essence? Is that still going to be in effect?
Yeah, that's for clearance for a fire truck.
Right. So if my car was technically 5 foot in width and I had 18 feet to put it in, that would leave me 13 feet, so I would legally be able to still park there with or without that parking spot you're talking about. So in other words, if my mother, who has bad knees, comes over to my house and needs to park there, and there's 13 feet from the edge of her car to the wall, and she's not using the parking space, is that going to be a problem?
Well, you got to remember, it's a two-way street.
Always has been.
Right. So I'm not advocating or encouraging anyone to park or do anything that possibly considered legal or illegal. You would just have to do what you believed appropriate.
Which is
At
12
that
feet.
time.
That's what I'm trying to get clear with you, which is.
So you do need to have 12 feet.
Right.
Now, whether or not how you park your vehicles, that would be up to you. I guess I'm just not commenting on whether or not you wouldn't receive a ticket or whether or not people wouldn't complain.
I know people are not going to complain because it's been that way ever since I've been there for 13 years. So I'm just trying to get clear is if I have my 12-foot clearance, I'm in ordinance with what the town is, my expectation the town has of me parking my car in front of my own house. That's all, I'm just trying to get clear on that.
Sure, you need 12 feet. Typically, it's 6 feet on either side of the center line of the road, but yes, you need 12 feet.
Perfect. And then you guys will let us know whether you approve and what you're going to approve right now, and then you'll let us know on a time frame. Is that correct? On when things may or may not start happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to go according to his build schedule, and we can't
Yeah. Okay.
control how things go
Because
during the build.
nobody's going to be able to park around there while all that's going on. They're going to park their trucks up there
Yeah,
and
I
all
mean,
that kind of stuff,
they
right?
can't right now, and they won't be able to then.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, I have a general question. How does the neighborhood use the road for parking at this point, given that it's 24 feet wide?
They can park on the shoulder.
Right, but, so the shoulder will not be diminished at
No,
all?
in this case,
It will be,
yeah,
with
because.
the 18-foot
yeah,
roadway.
There's going to be a retaining wall with a
Right.
drop-off.
So that's my question, is at this time, how many people who live in that stretch actually do park on the road using the shoulder
You mean before the slide?
before the slide?
Yeah,
obviously?
the answer was,
Right.
for the
Okay.
record, the answer was pretty much everybody.
I just needed to get a full picture of it. Thanks.
There are other comments for the public? Sure, nobody?
So I'd like to make a motion.
First, I'd like to close the
Oh,
public
okay.
section. And are there any other questions from the council here? Okay, then I'd entertain a motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the town manager to award the contract to Massa Construction for the Forest Avenue Stabilization Project in an amount not to exceed $288,498 for the base bid plus bid alternate work. And number 3, appropriate, do I do both of those, 2 and 3?
Yeah.
Oh, I get it, okay. And allocate a project contingency reserve of $28,850, 10% depending on the award amount, to be used by the town manager to cover unforeseen project costs, and appropriate $117,350 from general fund reserves to Fund 52, storm recovery, depending on the bid amount.
Sorry for clarification. Are you?
It's the bid alternate with the parking
It
space.
is with the build.
Yeah, that's where you
Got
read
it, got
the
it, got it.
dollars.
Just before
Okay.
I second that motion, I needed to clarify.
So,
Did you second it?
are you going to second
I
it?
seconded it.
Okay, so we have a motion, Kohler, second, Goddard. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That is unanimous. So, that's good. I mean, I'm glad this bid came in the way it did. It allows us a number of options, and I think we'll have a good outcome. We got a little weather window here, and that's also going to be applicable in the next agenda item also.
And I just want to finish that by saying that, and Stacy, I heard you say that that's my parking place. I just, for the
Yeah.
record, I want to make sure, given that some of this on-street shoulder parking will be eliminated, I just had to say it for the public's sake, that,
For sure, and the reason that I say it the way I do is because all of us that live up there honor and respect each other's.
got it.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great. I mean,
So
yeah,
Stacy,
and everybody
you can't
recognizes
speak
that
from
there's
the
a,
audience. Unfortunately, we can't hear you.
yeah.
And open,
So,
closed.
yeah, open time is technically closed, but yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, I think that's important. What Renee was wanting to speak for the record is that, you know, people do have the habits of parking in particular spots, but that's true. On a public right-of-way, it's all public and fungible, if you will.
In other words, first come, first serve.
Yeah.
Sure. How
Yeah.
it works is, with this approval, I give them a notice of award. They have so many days, 10 days, to get me all the documentation they need, bonds, contract, whatever else we need. Then I give them the notice to proceed. Then they have so many days to start. I believe that they said, I think realistically, assuming the weather's good, they'll be done by mid-November, if not sooner.
All right. Great. And I hope that's satisfactory for everybody. I think it's turned out as well as we could expect, considering the conditions there. The next agenda item is on the other special meeting that we're running concurrently with this one, which is not that piece of paper at all. Okay, that is approve a change order to the contract with Majori and Galati for the Tamalpais Mountain View Pavement Rehabilitation Project to include the repavement of Scenic Avenue from Shapiro Lane to Bay Road. And Garrett, do you want to give us a staff report?
Sure. Just as a little background, you may recall just in your September council meeting, you awarded a bid to Majora and Gelati for the Tamalpais and Mountain View paving project. In our discussions with them in a pre-construction meeting, we happened to bring up Scenic, or they brought up Scenic. I'm actually not sure who brought up Scenic. I think we did, and they expressed interest in the project. And what they indicated is, since they are already mobilizing all the same equipment, and actually they're staging roughly in the same area, it might make sense for them to go ahead and do that work. Now, in order for them to do that work, we'd have to do a change order to their Tamalpais and Mountain View contract. So we took a look at things, we did a field inspection, and one of the things that we discovered is, no one knew, is that there's a concrete street underneath the asphalt in that section of Scenic, which is from basically Shapiro Lane to Bay. And so what happens is the contractor looked at it and said, hey, it's cracked. And so really the difference between a regular paving project that we would do and this project, in which there's a concrete street underneath, is that the best way to do it is, in essence, we would need this fabric material that you put on with asphalt in the material on the concrete. And ultimately what that does is it prevents the further cracking of the concrete to go up through the asphalt once you have the road reconstructed. And so That's kind of the technical aspects. In terms of the cost savings, we think it's pretty significant. You don't have any mobilization costs of $8,000 to $10,000 since they're already out there. You actually don't have to prepare plans and specs. You don't have to bid it. The timing's good, and actually, if we do this, the reason why it's here tonight is that the work would be done in conjunction with Mountain View Tamalpais. So really, next week, you could have all 3 roads completed. Now, just as a point of clarification, scenic, at least portions of scenic, were identified within your pavement management plan, portions of scenic. This may not be quite the same portion, but we think actually in looking at it, it's probably it's in pretty much state of disrepair, so this portion's actually better to do. Cost-wise, it's about what we thought it would cost, and so that's why we're doing this change order, just because they're out here, makes perfect sense, and actually you can get 3 roads done within a week's period. That's pretty good, weather permitting.
Well, the weather first week in October should be pretty good, but Barbara, you have a question?
Yeah, so it sounds great. Just a question. So originally we were thinking of doing parts of scenic in and I think that was going to be between 70 and 80,000. Is this in lieu of doing the other stuff, or what? I'm just a little confused on that.
So what it is, I believe, for scenic, actually, for scenic, we were thinking, because we thought we'd have to do plans and specs, we thought maybe it'd be 60 to 70,000 to do a portion of scenic, of which this is close to it. However, we're still doing the pothole repair in scenic caused by the storm damage.
And we're doing that with staff, right?
No, the pothole repair, we're actually going to contract that out.
Okay.
And then the upper curve on scenic, on a portion of scenic, we're actually going to use staff to do that work. So we're still doing that work. I'm not too sure on the timing.
But it's not going to be significant costs on top of this.
No, it won't be significant costs. The pothole repair by FEMA, that's covered by, that's 93% covered.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't coming out like twice as much ultimately with all the other repairs.
No, oddly, coincidentally, and it's a good fortuitous, again, is it kind of is matching what we have in the budget, so there's no budget adjustments needed.
Great. Thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, a couple questions. How many linear feet of scenic road is this going to repave?
I think it's 550 linear feet.
Okay, and it said that the cost is consistent with the engineer's estimate for the overlay work, at the bottom of the 3rd paragraph. And how much was that engineer's estimate for the overlay work?
Well, I think the construction estimate maybe was 55,000 or so, but you got to remember we didn't know there's a concrete street underneath the portion of the road. The fabric material is about 10, so it's pretty close.
Okay, and then and you mentioned it'll save about $8,000 to $10,000 in mobilization costs, which is, makes sense. And then are there other what are the other savings by going forward now?
Well, what we're doing here is normally under our code, if you had to bid this out, it'd be more than 45,000, so you would have to bid it out, and you have to prepare plans and specs. So we would need an engineering firm to prepare plans and specs, then we need to publish it, award the bid, and the reality is if you're going to do that, you wouldn't do this job until the spring.
Mm-hmm. And what's it typically cost to do the plans and specs?
Plans and specs, I'd say for this job, you're looking at probably, because they have to prepare everything, $10,000 to $15,000.
Okay. And then I also have a concern. There are a number of items, just looking at the ad order, there's no curb and so forth. There are a number of things that are sort of omitted, and are we pretty confident we don't need those types of items added to the road work?
Oh, the things you mean that are crossed off?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? He just used the form for
Okay.
another project, and he just changed it to kind of meet the requirements of that section.
And then one last question on this ad order. It has a quantity for cold plain asphalt concrete of 1,010. Is that like square yards or what? What does that refer to?
That must be cubic yards.
Or cubic yard, okay. And so if we go forward with this, it'd essentially be able to complete this by November.
We'd be able to complete it by next Friday.
Oh, by next Friday, even quicker, okay.
Yeah, now, for the public, if anyone's watching, what's going to happen is with Tamalpais and Mountain View, Monday and Tuesday, the roads will be closed. I believe we might be able to make some access to people who live along those roads at times, but on Wednesday and Thursday, we'll be paving, and so the roads will be closed to everyone for the paving project. And so it's the end of the week, around Thursday or so is where we'll probably pave Scenic. They'll be doing some other work, I think, on Tuesday on Scenic. So what we're doing is we're just trying to phase it so that not all 3 roads are closed at the same time. But ideally, we should all be completed by the end of Friday next week.
So just a question, do we put flyers on people's houses letting them know that the road will be closed? So they can make other plans?
So we did next door and we do signage, but because we're moving so fast on the Scenic portion, we're just going to end up doing next door. We wouldn't be able to, and signage, we wouldn't be able to do a mailer. Everything's just moving too fast.
Can we put signs up in advance that tell people that it's going to happen so they'll know?
Yeah,
Because
so
not everyone's on Nextdoor, as we know.
Yeah, so we put signs out, so we'll ask the contractor to do that.
Do it, a few days in advance so they can prepare for it.
Yeah, best case scenario is he can maybe do it tomorrow.
Okay, great.
And I'll just add that I received a phone call from someone who I know on Mountain View who didn't know what was going on, read something on Nextdoor, and she, being the good neighbor that she is, was able to say, I've talked to every neighbor on my street, so they now know what's going on. And then by that afternoon, you guys had already posted the official signage. So in some ways, that's a good way to go. If you know anyone on these streets and you're listening to this, there's never been a better use of neighbor to neighbor.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this is the one-way section of Tamalpais where Scenic turns and crosses Tamalpais at the top, going down to the top of Mountain View, then down that real steep section of Mountain View that's probably the steepest street in town. And then Shapiro Avenue is right where the 2 posts are on the bottom of Scenic, where you just start up the hill and you go up, and Bay Road is the first one that comes in from the right. So that's what we're talking about.
And Garrett, also, I would just suggest you put some kind of advisory on the town website too.
Yeah, because we know everybody watches that town website every day. All right, so
I would like to make a motion.
I would actually first
Sorry,
like to
I
open
am
this
so
up to
sorry.
public comment. So, anybody want to talk? Or questions?
I'd like to request 5 minutes, 'cause I'm speaking for some neighbors on Bay and Scenic, and that couldn't get here, and some are actually out of the country, but know what's going on.
Okay.
Okay, Denise Larson, I live at 174 Scenic Road, so I'm in the house on the right past Bay Road. I spoke with Dennis at Ross Valley Sanitary District on Monday. He said he knew nothing about anything going on in Scenic, and to be very inappropriate for the town to move ahead without informing them. So I don't know if something happened between now and then, but he knew nothing about it. He said the only thing he knew about was that they had discussed and approved was Mountain View between Manzanita and Tamalpais. He talked about, well, 2 things going on. I don't know if I was not able to get through to him today. I don't know if the pipe, the sewer pipe on Scenic is going to be, I guess, a spray-on kind of coating going through the manholes, because that was supposed to happen this year. But because of a backup on a project in Larkspur and then in Butterfield, they're going to go first. So Manna should start tentatively around January 1st. And then it'll take a month just to get from Manor on Scenic up to where I am, just right past Bay. And because I also have to do some work on my house, and I was asking him about, the road being closed and stuff. So what And he kept talking, and he mentioned asphalt, because they would only fill in what their trenches were, but he didn't say anything about spraying in the pipes and going through. I would just like the town to be 100% sure it's going to be a spray-on coating going through the manhole covers, because that road has been dug up so much, and if we're going to go through all the trouble of paving it, why then a few months later dig it all up again for the sewer pipe repairs? So I just want to make sure that's sure, and he knew nothing about any work going on Scenic. The other issue is the sign's already up, that no parking along Scenic. Went up this afternoon, they're already, they went past Bay Road, past my house, up past Fur Trail and all the way up, and I don't know why there's going to be no parking in all those areas if they're only going to go to Bay Road, and what that's about, since there are plenty of us that, have the summered cabins that do not have off-street parking, and just wanted to know why it's so far up for the non-parking. Also, I would really like to get the issues cleared up that has caused the damage to Scenic Road. When the town, right past, if you go past Bay up Scenic and you make that really sharp left turn, there's a big culvert where the creek came down, went underneath the street. The town, and I've lived there for 29 years, so I've watched all this. The town redid that culvert, cemented it in, the base, took away the parking spot that was there. I would like to get that returned. And then put a retaining wall. Somehow the way the little retaining wall across the street from my house went caused the road to drop, and that's because it had been repaved, I think by PG&E when they redid the gas lines, they did the whole road. The street cracked. And the other thing, when they did that whole, where the culvert in the creek came down, they did not replace a rotted out pipe. I brought this up last October. I forgot what was going on here at the time. But it's a 6.5-foot piece of corrugated pipe, 18-inch diameter, that had rotted out underneath, and for years, because it catches all the rocks and the sticks that go down, there's that whole hill on that left-hand turn drains and runs down, goes through that 6.5-foot pipe, and drops into then where the creek comes in, then goes underneath the culvert and goes down that whole creek that ends up going past Shapiro. Last year when I was here, you said you would talk to Mark or email you. You forwarded on to Mark. Mark just said, well, because I've been talking about this for years, because it overflows and that's what's wrecked the street. And because all the rocks and mud comes down, it undermines my retaining wall, my hillside, undercuts it, and then his created all this, the way it flows down. That's why the street's pretty much ruined up there. When I talked to Mark, he said, well, we didn't do anything about it because you didn't like our idea, because 3 years ago they told me they're going to sleeve the pipe. And I said, well, sleeving the pipe makes it too small. I said, I don't have control over what you do or don't do, but I don't think it's going to handle the volume of water. So they did sleeve it last year. They went from a 12-inch pipe to about 11 and a half, right under 12 inch. And as I said, it's not going to work. Looks beautiful. It's not going to work. And it didn't, and overflowed, and rock and mud came down and filled up the drain grate, that's right there at Bay Road, where the fire hydrant is. It filled up with small rock and dirt. I couldn't get the grate off because all of us neighbors are always cleaning these things out. I called the town. They said they had other projects and they weren't busy, too busy. And then they came out and looked at it about a month later, and they said, well, the pipe that goes from the drain and then takes it up under right there at Bay and continues down Scenic had collapsed. So they really couldn't clean it out anyway. Well, one of my neighbors did clean out what he could, and the water flowed the rest of the season okay. So I guess I'm questioning if we're going to repave this, and I know it's a big push to get it done right away while it's still hot out because the asphalt won't set up otherwise, but that drainage pipe right as you turn on to Bay, that has to be replaced because it's just going to back everything up and continue down the road. It also goes down to my neighbor's house, impacts their property, etc. And also to get the pipe replaced. It's only 6.5 feet. It's only this much dirt on it. I could probably dig it out myself. They dumped kind of rip-rap rock on top. That had always been a parking spot. And we need them in the area, obviously, just all over the place. So it seems kind of silly to spend $65,000 and not take the time and the money to fix what's the two issues on two drainage pipes that are causing the problems on Scenic, because it'll look nice, but it's just going to get wrecked again. Again, I've lived there long enough to know what the problem is. Not only does that pipe need to be replaced as you make that left turn, it's back and it's almost a 90-degree angle. It needs to come maybe a foot this way, a slight more angle, a little forward, and the water would naturally flow. They put a berm there. The berm was a joke. I still have the sandbags there that I filled and packed last year. But it's frustrating to not have things should be done right the first time. So if you're going to pave up to Bay Road, then you should throw another couple grand or whatever it takes in there and get that pipe replaced so that drain can carry the water. Why there's no berms the rest of the way down the Scenic is because it just goes off like this and the water runs down both sides actually very nicely, so you don't need berms like you do higher up. In
Okay.
answer to your question.
Thank you. I think this is all good information. We should put this into the mix. Garrett, I mean, I saw you taking notes on a lot of the things. I know we've lined other pipes, particularly, that had been rotten on the bottom, and it does really add about 1/8 of an inch thick. It pushes it out with steam and sets, and it's actually a pretty long-lasting and good fix for these rotten culverts. We've used it in other areas. So this is basically a repaving contract, which is quite different than that, and I know I think it's a little bit of apples and oranges, but I think it's worth paying attention to this on a different.
I think we do, but you got to remember our storm drain system, it floods everywhere.
Yeah,
You need to be
this is something
cognizant, you
yeah.
redirect the water somehow to somewhere else, that creates problems somewhere else. Not to say that we won't take a look, but I'm just pointing out everywhere has the similar type of problem when it comes to flooding. In terms of the no parking signs, I believe it's needed for the Tamalpais Mountain View, for the equipment to get up there. And then because if there's no parking for cars, then maybe other cars can get around the equipment. I could check a little bit more with the contractor and with our public works manager tomorrow. And as to the sewer, I need to check. I don't really know. I know in Mountain View, Tamalpais Sewer District said they were done, and any other work they could do, they would do in the manholes. So I couldn't tell you or not if that
Might be
applied
good to
Scenic
verify that
without,
then.
I mean, we may have checked, but I'd have to ask our public works manager.
Okay. Another public question.
Deborah Benson, 370 Cascade. I am wondering why we all spent some time last night going over the budget extensively. And my last question was what the projects that were outlined in the budget. One was 662 linear feet of Scenic, not the piece that we're talking about here. And the rest of the projects, the capital improvement projects, were on their own page. And I was told that these were the projects that were going to be developed this year. Why didn't you guys mention this one, which you obviously knew about last night? And where is the money coming from if it wasn't in the budget?
Okay, what I just pointed out, you're right, didn't mention it yesterday, didn't actually think about it, but in the pavement management plan that we adopted and that we have as an exhibit under street resurfacing and repair, it has a list of projects. That's the funding source for this project. So there's money there, it's budgeted. On Scenic, there is a part in the pavement management system that talks about Scenic. This is just a different part of Scenic. So we're not going to be doing the other part of Scenic that's listed in there. If we're going to get into detail, the pavement management plan had the pavement condition of the Scenic portion we were thinking of doing at 63, which is fair condition, and if we did that work, it would bring it up to 100. What we decided in looking at things is it probably made sense to do this other part of Scenic, which is in much worse condition, probably less than 50, I forget what it is, and thought that would be a better use of the funds to do that portion of Scenic. So that's why I did point this out in the staff report. Ultimately, But the money is there. That's also what we pointed out in the staff report.
I have another question about the project. I was up on Scenic a week or two ago, and it's so narrow that most times you can't get two cars past one another, and the asphalt comes over to here, and then there's about this much of a drop, and there's dirt, and then the hillside drops away. How is that going to be dealt with? Is it going to stay the same, just going to put more asphalt on top of what's there?
I'm actually not, are you?
Have you driven up there
Recently? Not recently, but I'm
Okay.
not sure if this is the section we're repairing or a different section.
Oh, maybe it's a different section. Okay. Well,
Sounds like a different section, but, I mean, that's why it's one way in a lot of,
well, it's two ways in this section I'm talking about, right from below Denise's
yeah, in
house.
a practical sense, yeah, it's two ways, but, and it certainly will be during this project thing, but, in practice, people tend to drive because it's the whole circuit is one way during a section. People tend to drive in one direction. I mean, there's no question our roads in Fairfax are narrow, and basically we are physically constrained by the amount of space that there is there and what can be held up. So those laws of physics are probably driving a lot of this.
So, thank you. And in the interest of transparency, I would have felt better about, I felt pretty good last night, and then when I saw this, I didn't feel so good about
Well, Deborah, just
transparency.
one thing is that we have to do things in open session. So we couldn't have really discussed it because it was on this agenda for a special meeting. So part of what you can't do is discuss things before you've opened it up to the public.
Even that it's on the agenda?
It could have been mentioned it was on the agenda, but we couldn't have discussed it. So that's one thing to think about, is
Okay.
that we have to do things in open session. So even, it could have been a great idea to mention it.
That would
But-
have helped.
But I think, to chastise staff for that is really not the right thing. It was a mistake. And I think you probably would have wanted to talk about it more, which we wouldn't have been able to do as well.
No, I would have accepted that we couldn't talk about it. It just would have been nice to have had a heads up. Thank you.
Okay, and just for the public that may be watching here, what Deborah is referring to, and also Barbara, is that there was an orientation for candidates last night with staff. Try to, introduce people and what's going on. And, it's introductory. And that's what happened last night. And, if it is talking about something that's in an open session tonight, there's definite rules around it. I mean, we have to do all our thinking in public, and so that's what Barbara is referring to. Okay. So are there more questions from the public or comments? No? Seeing none, then I would close the public section. Bring it back to the council. Are there any further questions or discussion? Peter?
Yeah, Garrett, Denise Larson raised a couple of points that, are concerning. She mentioned, first of all, that there needed to be some work for the sewer pipe repairs possibly. I think she said applying some kind of spray-on coating. Do you know the status of what kind of work RVSD plans to do on that stretch of Scenic? Because it would seem to be a real false economy to go forward, pave it, and then if they're going to have to dig it up to replace the pipes or do some kind of repairs, obviously we don't want to duplicate that.
So we're
Could
going
you
to
address
check.
that?
We're going to check. Typically, so the answer to your question is I don't know, but we'll find out. So normally we ask, this is going pretty fast, so I have to ask our Public Works Manager to check. Like I previously stated with Tamalpais and Mountain View, any additional work they need to do can be done in the manholes. I don't know if that's possible on Scenic. If they are going to rip up the roads, then obviously we wouldn't move forward with Scenic. Although, what we do at times, if we did do the project, we would tell them that they cannot rip up the roads unless they repave the whole road, which is normally what they don't want to do. And unfortunately, they never want to pay maybe for their share of damage to the roads. They just repave their portion. So it's kind of a give and take, but I understand the concern, so we'll ask them.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't support doing this unless that's clarified. I mean, I would at least either not go forward with it or make it a condition of approving it that, you know, that no further excavation is going to need to be done by the sewer district. And then if that is the case, it seems like the thing to do is to wait. And also, don't we usually ask the utility to contribute to the cost of repaving if that part of it is having to be done because of utility repairs?
I don't believe water or sewer as a general practice contributes the same as PG&E. Oddly, I hate to say that, but that's normally
Okay.
how it works. So I would say, I think that's fine if you make a contingent on the sewer. Now, that being said, I don't know what their timing is. I don't know how long it's going to take. Generally, if we were to do this, it would be a moratorium on the street for at least 3 years, if not longer. That was the only reason we got them to hurry up on Mountain View and Tamalpais. We said, we're moving forward. You need to hustle up, get your work done. And they actually then got it done within the time frame. Otherwise, I don't know when they were going to do it.
Okay, and the 3-year moratorium is, once we pave it, then we say you can't dig up the street for 3 years.
That applies to all utilities. We don't
Okay.
let anyone dig up a street that's newly paved, unless it's an emergency.
Okay, and then in terms of the culvert and retaining wall issues that Denise mentioned, that's in the stretch of road that we're anticipating repaving?
I think that's above
It's
that.
above it, I think.
Is it above it? So
But if it's in there, we could look at it, but it's not part of the project.
going forward with this project, if we later on repaired that road, we wouldn't have to sort of redo the paving work that we're anticipating right now.
Sorry.
So if we go forward with this, we wouldn't need to be repaving it in order to repair the culvert issues that she had mentioned?
Well, I don't know about the culvert issues per se, if we would even repair it in the manner that she's referring to, but the issue is if we're repaving, if it covers that area, then if we did work there, then we would probably end up repaving that area.
So is the area that we're talking about repaving, is that next to that culvert that she talked about?
I'm thinking it's above it, but
Yeah, if you want to
Sorry,
clarify.
yeah,
that
if you would
be
like to clarify, I'd like to briefly reopen that's public section.
There is, okay, if you're driving up Scenic and the hairpin bay goes like this, the one culvert that Mark said was collapsed under the street is right there, and they have marked on the street, and that would be paved over. And that's where the street was lifted up from the water not fitting through, the diminished in diameter pipe coming down, lifted up a section about this big. The other one higher up is not there, but that is the one that causes all the problems. And it's sitting, it'd be so easy to pick it up and stick another one in the right place, the right size, the right diameter. But that one would be paved over and have to be dug up again.
Okay, but the lower one, so. Okay. How big an area is that where that lower culvert is? I'm just, again, my concern is just not needlessly reduplicating paving work.
But I think one of the things Garrett pointed out is we don't always redo these culverts because we can cause other problems downstream. So it's not a fait accompli that that's going to happen.
I understand. I just wanted to sort
I
of
think I'm at a
understand the scope of it.
disadvantage here because we don't have a set of plans and drawings to show where everything is and where the pavement line is going. We could talk to the contractor about that, and it sounds like if we were to do this paving project, do you want to stop before we get to any of those areas?
I don't want to stop. I think we should go forward with the idea of checking with Ross Valley sanitary district on what they're doing. If they have something imminent planned, then we should have a contingency of not moving forward potentially. But it really concerns me that we're ready to go on this road that's really in bad shape, and now we're talking about delaying where we would never have the kind of money to do this again. And this, didn't you say this portion of the road is about 50 rated?
Yeah, I
It's
believe
below
it's
50.
lower, less than 50.
So that's poor. So we have a real opportunity here, and I think we should move forward with
And,
it.
you know, the part we haven't reiterated is the cost savings in already having the staging and the mobilization of the project right there in this, you know, in the circuit. So I think we have to account for that and then look at what we would need to do in a culvert situation, especially since one of them isn't in the area that we're talking about repaving anyway. So unless you have something more, I really would like to make a motion that we,
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to respond to these.
Yeah, and I would,
These
yeah,
comments.
and before you do, I would like to make one point in that the liners that go into these culverts are not, you don't rip up the street to put them in. You fit them in through the end, and you block the sides, and it's basically a layer of plastic about this thick that goes in there, and a bunch of, it's sealed on the ends, and high-pressure steam is going in there. It stretches to fit the inside of the pipe. It seals it really well, and then once the steam is gone, it cools off, and it's in place, and you're going in through the end. And we've used this on the Pastoria outfall, and it's a very good outcome. And it's, you know, that was, I don't know how many feet underground,
Sure,
10 or
it's-
12 feet underground. I mean, you don't have to tear it up.
No, I understand that. It's sort of like the pipe bursting technology to replace the pipe from the inside out. And obviously, we aren't here to address the issues with that culvert or not. I just want to get some sense of, you know, are we going to be looking at repaving this in a couple of years? I want to make sure that we're not, going forward and then having to duplicate that. I agree, it's great to save money when you can, but it's also important to think ahead and think comprehensively to make sure we're not, rushing to save some money and end up, spending more down the road. So I don't think we can address the culvert issue necessarily here. I don't think that it's a large enough of an area where, if we make that repair, so the culvert I think it would just have to, I'm satisfied that would have to redo that portion of the road. It's not going to be a huge portion of the road. So I actually would like to make a motion to approve the change order to the contract with Maggiore and Gelati for the Tamalpais Mountain View Pavement Rehabilitation Project to include the repavement of Scenic Avenue from Shapiro Lane to Bay Road, but with the additional condition that it's subject to confirmation that RVSD will not need to do any excavation work on that stretch of scenic road for a period of 3 years, and that staff.
We'd make a friendly amendment to that. We can't wait 3 years.
No,
I mean,
no,
I
here-
think there's a
let me-
contingency that would be something like within the next 3 months.
Here, let me finish the condition that staff clarify that RVSD would not have any plans to do any excavation for that moratorium period before going forward with this work, so as to avoid the need to, have to dig up and repair the road.
Would make a friendly amendment to that. Again, Peter, what you're saying is if they think within 3 years they're going to do some work, we're not moving forward. And I'm not in agreement with that. I think if they're going to do something within the next 3 months, that's a different story. And we would have to say no, but it also sounds like they can probably go through manholes. So I'm not in agreement with the motion where we're saying, if they say, oh yeah, within 3 years, which I'm sure they haven't even planned out the next 3 years. So I would make a friendly amendment, which would say within the next 3 months.
What's your rationale for the next 3 months?
That's immediate time frame versus 3
Yeah.
years. No organization has planned out their next 3 years worth of work, and we shouldn't stop moving forward on a road that's rated 50. I think it's very simple. And they would just have to wait, and plan appropriately.
Or you could go with the friendly amendment, which says that if they do the work, that they agree to fully repave over the top of it. And not just one of those slip line things that they do, like they did on Live Oak, where they just do a part of the road. So if they agree to come in and do a side-to-side, curb-to-curb, then no foul.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's a good thing. We could, so if it turns out you have this home conversation tomorrow with their Director of Public Works at Marin Sanitary, which is what you're talking about doing, and they said, oh yeah, we were going to be up there, December 1st or whatever, that's within a 90-day period. And that would throw this amendment into question. But if they're saying, oh yeah, we're going to do it sometime, you say, well, you're not going to do it until at least 3 years from now. And that sounds like we're going ahead.
So my
And if they
question-
want to go less, in 2 years from now, they're going to pave it curb to curb.
John, we're going to
That's
get
the deal.
ourselves keyholed here, because if they say, well, we had a plan that we might start some work, we're not sure how long the pipe job would be, but it could happen in the next 3 months. They're not going to be able to give us very concrete information that's going to allow us to get this job done in the most economical way next week. So I think that we may have to take a risk here, in my opinion, to move forward unless there's definitive information from the Ross Valley Sanitary District that, oh gosh, we forgot to tell you we're starting next week. I don't know if we can put a number on it or a quantity, because
I agree with you, Renee.
Yeah,
I think we
I-
need to do this. We
Yeah.
don't get this opportunity very often, and there are a lot of folks up there that have been waiting a really long time to have Scenic Road done, and we don't have a lot of money. So I don't think we should be waiting at this point.
Yeah.
Well,
mean,
I agree with your point, but that is an unknown factor. I mean, we don't want to go forward if there's going to be a major, if they're going to be digging up the streets. I mean, what we need to do is clarify that that's not going to be the case. And I like David's suggested amendment. Garrett, back up a little bit. What do you need, what information do you need that you can get from Ross Valley to make sure that we're not going forward with something that's going to be ripped up?
Normally, so here's a dilemma. They could tell us, oh, we're going to do something in the spring or December, and then not do it. Then, that's a problem. I think maybe the best way to do it is go, okay, here's the deal. We're moving toward this paving. Right now, you can't do any work for 3 years, and if you do, you just need to repave the whole section edge to edge. See what they say.
How many feet are we talking about here of this extra special project?
Oh, you mean a square feet?
550? No, straight up the street. Was
Yeah,
it
it's
500
like
feet?
550 linear
So
feet or
linear
so.
500 feet of sewer line, just from my personal experience suing municipalities for failures of sewer lines, have there been complaints that have been coming in about sanitary sewer overflows? Have there been complaints in the neighborhood of the smell of sewage? In the absence of that, we may be on safe ground that there's no infiltration or exfiltration from those lines. Are people having trouble with their laterals in that community? Have they addressed it to us? If not, then more likely than not, this would be a wonderful opportunity that Ross Valley might be to take a prophylactic approach to improving the line. But if there have been no problems and they've maybe TV'd the line, then what we're looking at here is something that is not going to intrude upon this 500 square feet. And Renee is exactly right. Folks sit around for the better part of their lifetimes waiting for their town to come along and spend their tax dollars effectively. And this is that opportunity. So somebody make a motion and let's go to the MCCMC dinner.
Well, I'd like to make an alternate motion, or do we need to vote on Peter's motion?
Well, there's currently
How do we
no
do
Yeah,
full second.
let me restate my motion. A motion to approve change order contract with Maggiore and Gelati for Tamalpais Mountain View pavement rehabilitation project to include the repavement of Scenic Avenue from Shapiro Lane to Bay Road, subject to the condition that staff determine that, discuss with RVSD and determine that there would not be any plans for RVSD to do excavation work on that stretch of road, or alternatively, that RVSD, if it was to go forward with work during that period, would agree to repave that section of the road.
I think I would make a friendly amendment to that would be immediate plans, because Garrett has pointed out that RVSD will say, yeah, we're going to do something, and they never come through. So it'd have to be immediate plans.
I would support that second.
Okay, I'll accept that.
All right. So we have a motion, Locks, a second Kohler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that was with the friendly amendment.
Yes, it was.
Did you get that?
Okay.
Okay. And that would be unanimous, right? Barbara? Yeah, okay. Well, great. Thanks. Hopefully we'll move forward on this without any glitches from Marin Sanitary. I think you're very right, David. that,
Ross Valley
you know,
Sanitary District.
Sorry, Ross Valley Sanitary.
Patty Garbarino will be in here and say, I'm not fixing your sewer.
Yeah, well, we all know that that's not in her purview. But, you know, recycling, yes. Sewer pipes, no. Okay, so hopefully this is all going to go great, and we're going to get what we need out of it, and our town is going to get some paved streets almost right away. So this is good news. And with that, I would like to adjourn.